Welcome to Work It, Live It, Own It, where we trade survival mode for strategies that help you thrive in career, life, and everything in between. I'm your hostess, work-life harmony strategist, SaCola Lehr. Have you ever had that sinking feeling that your hard work is not getting you ahead, but is actually just moving the goalpost for you? I mean, if you stay late at work, working on extra projects, and you are delivering exceptional results, and your reward is more work, it's not the next plaque or certificate. It's just, oh, you did such a great job on this. Here, let me give you this project because I know you can handle it well. Or if you've been like me and you were a classroom teacher and you know how to handle your students in a way that is positive and fulfilling, and they look at you and go, hey, we've got this new student here. Here, we're just going to give you this particular student because we know you know how to handle that particular type of student well. And let me tell you, this is what we call the over-delivering trap. It's where you are delivering exceptional results, but the only reward that you're getting is more work. And if that sounds familiar, then you're not alone, because in the research that I've done to prepare for this conversation with you all, I have found that so many women in particular are struggling with the over-delivering trap. And this has come up again and again. And as one woman that I personally recently spoke with says that I feel like I've trained my employer to expect the impossible, and now I'm the one who's paying the price. So today we're going to talk about how to escape that trap. And because this isn't about slacking off or caring less about what you do, it's about working in a way that is sustainable, reclaiming your time and your energy, and ensuring that your workload and all the hard work that you're putting in is being recognized and not just rewarded with more work. And we are also going to explore how we have fallen into this trap, why we've fallen into this trap. And I'm also going to give you 3 concrete strategies to start resetting some of those expectations today. So hello and welcome back to Work It, Live It, Own It. This is the place to be if you're ready to trade the work-life balance burnout for harmony and exhaustion for energy. I'm SaCola Lehr, and I am here to help you leverage your work-life integration. So without further ado, I want to talk about the psychology of the over-delivering trap. So how did we end up at this point? If you've recognized it or you're at the beginning phases of recognizing where you are right now, one thing that we need to be honest with ourselves is that this didn't happen overnight. This was something that was gradual. It was a slow creep. And it started out with small yeses, believe it or not, because those small yeses eventually led to overwhelming workload. And my research has shown that it's often a combination of 3 powerful psychological drivers. And the first one is the high achiever syndrome. Now, many of us from our childhood, we might have been conditioned to believe that our value was tied with our accomplishments. When we got the good job, Johnny, good job, Sally, you made straight A's. And that made you want to be even more of a straight A student, and not just straight A's. I want A pluses. Maybe you were the team captain. Maybe you were the one who went the extra mile and everything. And that identity somehow carried over into adulthood and into our careers or our businesses. And the idea of delivering anything less than our absolute best will start to feel like a personal failure. And so we're not just doing a job, we're trying to prove our worth over and over again. Shadow side of being a good colleague is people pleasing. We want to be seen as helpful, reliable, indispensable. We might even said in our interviews, I am willing to go above and beyond on work projects. But you know what? I was reading something recently, and one woman said this so powerfully. She said, I had to ask myself, am I being kind or am I betraying myself to avoid disappointing others? Ouch. Because people pleasing, when you really get down to it, it's not about generosity. It's about seeking a validation in order to avoid conflict. It leads us to say yes to things that we don't even have the bandwidth or energy or time for. And because it's so uncomfortable for us to say no, it feels worse than the exhaustion of doing the extra work. And finally, for many of us, our work has become our identity. Now, this is especially for women here because we may not have a partner, a spouse, or children, but it's easy for our professional persona to become our central personal persona. And so we spend more time working than doing anything else. And so it's natural for our sense of self to start getting wrapped up in our our professional accomplishments and achievements. And the problem is when your job is your identity, any setback or any criticism that may receive, it feels like a fundamental failure or flaw in who you are as an individual. And I never forget, I was so guilty of this. And I had a former school principal tell me, don't take things too personally. And I did. And that is what makes it terrifying to pull back, because I could sit up here and go above and beyond, but someone else could just do the bare minimum. And guess what? They get the same results or get the same pay that I have. And so if any of this sounds familiar, whether it's the high achiever, the people pleaser, or the one who has where your identity is wrapped up in your job title, maybe perhaps it's a mix of all three for you. And when you combine these traits with a workplace that is happy to take as much of you as you're willing to give, you have the perfect recipe for the over-delivering trap. But now, what is the true cost to this? Because the reward of over-delivering is almost more work, as I previously mentioned, but the cost is far more than just a few late nights at work. It's the immediate cost of burnout and resentment. Some of the discussions I was reading online, I analyzed and discovered that a lot of women who were complaining about this were working 50, 60 to 70 hours a week, only to see colleagues work the regular hours, 9 to 5, and get the same annual raises they received. And so the initial pride in their work slowly starts to curdle into this deep, corrosive resentment. And that resentment is towards their employer who took advantage of them. Then they have resentment towards themselves because they allowed it to happen. So there's this physical and mental toll that we go through when we are a victim of, or we've allowed ourselves to become a victim of the over-delivering trap. But another one that really takes a toll is chronic health conditions that are being caused and worsened by overwork. Some of these may come in the form of looking like you work 10 hours straight without even eating or drinking, completely disconnecting to what your body's basic needs are. One woman who I spoke to about this, she said she realized that her body was breaking down and she started to realize that no job was worth it. And finally, the invisible toll of our lives outside of work. And this was one of the most heartbreaking things I saw in my reading, was that a woman described having zero energy left for anything else. Her story really stuck out to me because she said, I cannot stress how good it feels to have a clean house. I used to feel horrible because I couldn't keep my house clean. I didn't realize at the time it was because I just didn't even have the energy to do so. And so that is a true cost of over-delivering. And it's not just about being tired, though. It's about your life shrinking into something but nothing but work and recovery. Think about it this way. is when your weekends are no longer for joy, connection, meaningful interactions. It's simply just for you to gather enough energy so you can survive the next work week. And it looks like when you look around and you realize that, hey, I haven't had my yearly physical. I haven't even gone to the dentist. You've been neglecting your health, your home, your friendships, yourself. But here's the good thing. You can get out of the trap. Now, it's not easy, but it is possible, and it starts with a few strategic shifts. Now, remember, you didn't get into the over-delivering trap overnight, so it is going to take some time for you to get out of it and reverse the over-delivering trap. Now, I know that this trap has its devastating costs, but again, I want to share with you these 3 strategies, and I want you to try to at least start to implement one of them this week. So the first one is the strategic under-delivery experiment. Well, what does that look like? It does sound a little scary, I know, but I'm not talking about doing a bad job. I'm talking about recalibrating what a good job means. So for 1 week, I want you to consciously choose 1 or 2 tasks and deliver them, let's say, at 80% of your usual effort. So if you're already going above and beyond, that means you're going over 100%. But this time I want you to try to deliver them at 80%. This might mean turning in a report without all the extra optional analysis. It might mean preparing for a meeting for 1 hour instead of 3 hours in advance, especially if this is a repeat client. It might mean sending an email that is simply good enough instead of perfectly crafted. You know, those emails where you sit back and you look at it and you revise it 3 or 4 times because you want it to sound just right? The goal here is to test your own assumptions. What is actually going to happen when you go above and beyond on every single thing? Will the project fail? Does your boss or supervisor get angry? Or does nothing happen? And most people are really shocked to find, particularly women, high-achieving women, they're shocked to find that their 80% is still what most people consider 100%. So if you set the bar so high for yourself that you even started to have a distorted view of what's required, it is time for you to take a step back. Try this experiment, gather some data, and it's really about proving to yourself that you can pull back without everything falling apart. The second strategy is what I like to call friction and framing. So this happens when you are the go-to person that people always constantly come to and they rely on. And instead of you being or giving the default immediate yes, like, sure, I can help you with that, your default needs to become a thoughtful pause. You need to pause before you answer and respond. So this is where you're going to introduce a little bit of healthy friction. So I want you to try this. I'm going to give you some suggestions, but you can try and craft your own that is more comfortable to you. So when your boss or your colleague asks you to take on something new, and instead of saying, sure, I'll get right on it, I want you to try one of these phrases. Ready? The first one is, that sounds interesting. Let me take a look at my current workload and I'll get back to you at the end of the day and see how I can fit this in. The second is, I'm happy to help with that to make sure I give it the right attention. Which of my current projects should I deprioritize to make room for this? And the third and final one I have for you is a little bit more direct. That's more my speed, where I will go, my plate is full right now and I can take a look at that perhaps next week. But if it is more urgent, then perhaps you might want to talk to so-and-so. They could be a good person to start with. Again, this is about the framing part. You're not saying no. You know that part that you hate to say if this conversation resonates with you. It's really about framing your yes. And it's framing your yes within the context of your existing workload. It's allowing you to demonstrate that your time is a finite resource and that you're managing your time strategically. That is the immediate shift that makes it so powerful and dynamic because it forces not only you, but also the other person that has come to you seeking for help to consider the trade-offs. And it also positions you as a strategic partner, not just a pair of helping hands. And then finally, this is one of the most powerful mindset shifts is it's just a job. One of my college professors said that if you're going out into the world and you're seeking employment, you are not looking for a job because a job stands for just over broke. You're looking for an employment opportunity. Now, this mindset shift of it's just a job, it is one of the deepest yet most important pieces of work that you can do for yourself because you're going to start untangling your self-worth from your job performance. And so one of the most powerful pieces of advice that did come up when I was preparing for our conversation was a woman who was talking to her therapist, and her therapist responded back to her and said, "It's just a job you go to. You work 8 to 5 and you go home." That may sound easier said than done. So how do you do this? How do you start this? Well, you have to intentionally create a life outside of work so compelling, so fun, so interesting that it actually starts to compete for your time, attention, and energy. So try scheduling things that matter to you. It could be a walk with a friend, a pottery class, a concert that's coming up in a few months. That's right. Schedule that as well. It could be dedicating an hour to read a novel that you've always wanted to read, but you didn't make the time. And I want you to treat these appointments with the same non-negotiable importance as if you were meeting a CEO of a company or someone very important. It could be a public figure, celebrity, whomever it is. I want you to treat it with the same non-negotiable importance. And when you find yourself obsessing over a work problem at 9 p.m. at night, I want you to ask yourself, is this truly urgent or am I just seeking a feeling of accomplishment? And if it is the latter, I want you to close your laptop because the work will be there tomorrow. Your life is happening right now, and tomorrow is not promised to any of us. What this really is about is redefining success on your own terms and not the success of seeking another promotion. Maybe it's about having energy and time to cook with your family. Maybe it's having a clean house because you had the time to do so. Or maybe it's just about simply feeling at peace. So now today we've talked about the over-delivering trap, the exhausting cycle of going above and beyond, and setting the new expectation of what 100% looks like. We've explored our own psychology of where some of these things might have come up, whether it's high-achieving nature, our people-pleasing tendencies, or our tendencies to allow our personal identity to get wrapped up into our work, which makes us vulnerable for the over-delivering trap. But we've also laid out a path for escape. And that means that we have to start experimenting with the strategic under-delivery to prove to ourselves that it is safe to pull back. And it also continues with another layer of friction and framing to manage some of those upcoming requests strategically. Instead of giving that immediate yes, give yourself that thoughtful pause. But most importantly, it also involves that deep work of untangling your self-worth with your work and not taking so many things personally. So that way you can start building a life as compelling as your career. So my challenge for you, for all of us this week, is I want you to try one of those strategies, just one. And maybe you'll try the 80% experiment on a single project. Maybe you'll use one of the friction phrases and you come up with your own and you practice it so it sounds natural. And I want you to start small, gather that data, and maybe prove to yourself that a different way is possible. Because at the end of the day, guys, harmony is not about doing less. It's about doing what matters most and what is sustainable for you. And it's always about remembering that you are more than just productivity and to-do list. You're more than just a job title. And you deserve energy left over to live the life you love. So thank you again for joining me on Work It, Live It, Own It. If this episode resonated with you, please don't forget to download it and maybe possibly consider sharing it with a friend who might need to hear it. If you're on YouTube, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you'll stay in the know when I upload a new video. Until next time, take care of yourself and be kind to yourself. See you soon.